but I would, one, give you an overview of why this is an appropriate form of professional learning, and then two, show you how this applies to the work that you're doing. Okay, so this is based on the work of an Australian academic known as Simon Breakspear. Okay, and what we're going to look at today is that he advocates this as a form of professional learning because one, he thinks it's simplicity allows it to be effective, and I'll show you that as we go through for the rest of this session. So the key word here is the book is this. It's a book that he's written, but the bit that we're interested in here is the tagline. We've got teaching sprint, so it's how overloaded educators can keep getting better. So what it is doing is it's exemplifying and accepting the fact that teachers are overloaded. They're asked to do lots of different things. Many of you, again, have been asked to come here today, overloading the work that you've been asked to do. But also, it's about placing importance on improvement and keeping getting better. Because ultimately, all of you are here today and all of you are teachers because you have a belief in improvement. You have a belief that people can get better. You believe that your young people can get better. And also you believe that you can get better as well. Now, what Breakspear gives us is a framework of accepting the fact that sometimes that maybe that belief in improvement gets lost. And it gets lost because of a number of different factors. But what he is proposing is a very simple framework that, again, you might be looking at it and going, this is so simple, but that is the point behind it, because it's not adding to the work that you're doing. And I will stress this continuously when I go through this presentation. What we're asking you to do as an inquiry-based champion and doing this inquiry should already be implemented in the work that you were planning to do over the next couple of weeks. If you're going out your way and planning something grand, that's not what we're looking for at this stage. It's something that you can take small and implement into your practice to try and make you a bit better. And that is the key point that we're looking for. So, again, how do teachers conceptualize their own professional learning? What do teachers think about when they think about their own learning? Do you conceptualize yourself as a learner? And that's a very key point here. Do you still view yourself as a learner, as someone who is still learning? Or is that something you did in your probation year or your initial teacher education? Okay, so when we look at the research, what do we say is the purpose and the function of teachers engaging in professional learning? The first one is to deepen their pedagogical knowledge. Okay, so there's a knowledge aspect to it. You get information that you can keep and you can use. The second one is expanding their instructional repertoires. You gain skills that you can implement within your class. And the third one is enhance your expertise. You become an expert in your own learners and your own teaching. Now, there's three different aspects that go in there. Now, they interleave, of course they do, but they're also quite distinct. And what you need to ask yourself is, do you still conceive of yourself as a teacher who does these things? Or is it something you did? And that's the key point here. Now, we're not asking anyone to share, but I would put, or even if you don't conceive of yourself with that, I'm pretty sure you could identify teachers that you work with, that's something that they did. They no longer do this because they've made it or they've already got to that point. Now, what we're trying to do is, we're trying to conceive is, well, why do we get to this point? Why do we lose this? And then how do we get it back? So, it's my favourite graph here. And what it is, it goes along the bottom here, we've got years of teaching experience. And up here, we've got effectiveness of teaching. And what you can see is that generally, the more you teach, the less effective you become. Now, that might seem very counterintuitive. Now, why does that happen? When you get more experience, you gain confidence. But then that also leads to complacency. Okay, so it's this idea, it's a psychological phenomenon known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, if anyone ever heard of that before. So it's like, kind of, the more confident you are, the more you rate your intelligence as being higher, but when you actually look at your intelligence is lower. So that's a kind of issue with self-assessment sometimes. If you ask people self-assess and they're really confident, they've got a really misplaced idea of their own intelligence. But again, it's this idea of, well, I've made it, and this is what I do. So we talk about this morning, this idea of disciplinary learning. Disciplinary learning is something that I do. So I'm really confident in that. I go in and I teach my higher class and I've taught it that way for 15 years and I'm not changing. But what you need to ask yourself is well, what's the effectiveness of that? Now, also though, what impact does that have? Workload has an impact on that as well. So with workload issues, we focus on getting the job done rather than getting better at how we do the job. So this isn't about shaming teachers. It's fundamentally not about shaming teachers. And again, I'm not sitting here who's no longer in the classroom saying, yeah, you know, people aren't thinking this anymore and they can't get better. It's not about that. It's about accepting that it's just about it's about floating. It's about getting through the day because you're being asked. And so many different people are pushing and pulling at you to get things done for them. And that is what leads to this, because you just stick where you are because you're scared to move. Because if you move, then the rest of it might all fall apart. And ultimately, teaching sprints is based on a fundamental principle. And the fundamental principle is it will always be true that all teachers can improve. Every single teacher can improve. That's the fundamental truth that we have within this. And if we believe that, it shifts our mindset. Now, the work of Breakspear provides a very simple method that takes into account these three core concepts to try and promote improvement in a small and manageable way. And I'll take you through that as we move forward. Okay. So teaching sprints have been developed to support teachers of all experience levels get going and keep going with small, manageable surges of evidence-informed professional learning nested in it and amongst the pressures of any given school term. Okay, so we have purposely chosen this at this time because we knew we'd get you out. So if we probably brought you out in February, would you all be here? Probably not. No, but again, it's still designed to be done at that time because it's small and manageable, and I'll show you how it's small and manageable. The teaching sprint approach is a term used to describe engagement in highly focused improvement work within a tightly framed period of time. So for the small period of time that you're being given to do your sprint on inquiry-based learning, that is what your focus is. You're focused on doing this. You're giving all effort to this small period of improvement. So again, modest improvement goals are the focus of growth. I mentioned this in my previous presentation. We're not asking for you to design a full skills idea. This is your class for a period of 4 weeks. It doesn't even need to be as long as that if you think it doesn't have to be, where this is what you're focusing on. And again, work on truly manageable shifts to practice. So if you can, again, just make one small change to your practice, you have achieved. It's small goals. It's focusing on the input that you put into it. We're not caring about the output that we get, that you're making a small, manageable change that you can move forward. And again, small evidence-informed changes can add up to significant improvement over time. Again, the sprints method is designed to be implemented at all times. You could go into a sprint for whatever you choose to be. We are again starting you off this day by focusing on inquiry-based approaches within a classroom setting, but you could choose to do this for whatever you wish. And again, as long as you're following this framework and focusing on something small and manageable, that's all we're asking for. Okay, so let's look then at what we talk about when we think about our sprints. Okay, so when we think about sprints, it's about improvement. It's about trying to improve yourself and also improve learning experiences for young people. So again, what we're wanting to think about is, well, what do we want to improve? So we want to start with the best bits. So again, you do not have the opportunity to go out there and read screeds and screeds of information about education. Because again, as we've already noticed, you've got so many different pressures that are put on. So as a result of this, you want to focus in on the bits that we've already identified as the good practice. And ultimately, that is our role as development officers, is to make that available and applicable for you. So you've come out here today and you've been given the best bits about inquiry-based learning. You've been given the best bits about cooperative learning and how to devise a question. You now have this information. Now, what do you do with it? Do you just sit and hold on to it? No, we want to practice it. So how do we practice? So practice makes progress. So the bridge to learning to practice, teachers must have the opportunity to apply new learning through intentional practice. So the key word here is you have been given this information today. How do you intentionally apply that? And the key word here is intentional. So you are setting aside that opportunity to work on a sprint. where you're going to implement the learning that you've been given today. We've all been to courses when we've went away, and to be honest, you've not thought about it since you left. Okay, you've all sat in your NQT year where you've sat and somebody's lectured you and you went away and you've not done anything with it. It's natural because of all the other pressures that are put on you. But what we're saying is that you've been given the learning. We need to intentionally practice that learning now. So how are we going to do that? And again, working on the small shifts to practice allows you to manage the human limits of improvement work. Planned and enacted in the right sequence, incremental changes can add up to appreciable improvements over time. Again, when I was working with students in NQTs throughout many years I was in school, I was always saying, pick one thing and focus on. We've all just said, I'm going to work on this, I'm going to work on that, and we've given big, broad areas that we're going to work on. There's nothing tangible there. We're focusing on detail, small, manageable changes that add up over time. And that is why we've chosen this as a method to try and implement inquiry-based approaches within the school. So hopefully you can see how it fits into the philosophy that sits behind teaching sprints. So what's the teaching sprint framework? So it's a three-part framework. So the first one is prepare, then we have sprint, and then we have review. Now, what you're involved in today is the preparation phase. You're going away, you're going to do the sprint, and then you're going to come back on I can't remember the new date, whatever it is, 16th, and that's your review stage. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do just now is I'm going to take you through each aspect of this to get you to really think about this, because again, what I'm hoping that you go away today is that you take this as a model of improvement that you can use for everything, not just for this. Okay. So if we think about determining a focus for a practice of improvement, so what is the one technique or strategy that you can trial that is likely to pay off for your learners? Okay. So think about all the inputs that you've had today. What's one thing that you could try and do from each of those inputs to try and implement here? Okay, so you've been given lots of information. How can you drill down into one thing that you think is going to result in positive learning experiences for the people that you're going to choose for this sprint? Okay, so what are the best bets for you to take forward? Okay, so what's that one thing that you think, do you know what, that's going to really work for this class that I'm thinking about? Again, we're not asking you to do everything. We're drilling down into the one thing that we think is going to really make an impact. Okay, so we're engaging in new learning informed by research evidence. That's what you've been doing today. No one needs to go, if you want to, you can go away and read about it, but no one's asking you to. You've got this today. We're also going to give you an opportunity to do some reflection on that, and that's the sheets that I put out. Again, we're drawing out the connections that we get from this. We're identifying the challenges to the existing approaches, and we're determining a precise strategy or technique for practice of improvement. So this preparation stage is so vital to a sprint, where you get to drill down on what you're specifically being asked to do. Okay, so the second part of this is different ways you can do this. Now, I'm going to get you to do one of these today. So this is called the 4 C's, and I'll come back to it in a second. I'll explain what it is. But another way that you can do is boulder, pebble, sand. And what essentially you're asking to do is the broad aim for our improvement is our boulder. So say it's like your pedagogical techniques you use in class. How do you drill down to that to get a pebble? And then how do you get drill down to that to get a sand? So say, for example, it's like, I want to work on my pedagogy in my class and the feature effective practice that I use. I might drill down on that further to get, I want to look at learning intentions. And then I drill down on that even further by saying that the technique I'm going to implement is co-created set of success criteria. So we've went from boulder right the way down to sand. And that's what we are asking for you to do today with your inquiry-based approach. The boulder is inquiry-based approaches in the class. How do you get that down to sand? How do you get that down to what you're going to do with this one class over the 4 weeks? Think about that you're really building down to, this is the class I'm going to use it with, this is the technique, question technique I'm going to use, this is the different parts of the inquiry cycle I'm going to use, and here's the cooperative learning technique that I'm going to use. And that's us got down to that minutiae of the sand. Okay, so preparation stage is really vital, and that's why we're going to give you considerable time this afternoon to really think about that preparation, and to also think about the particular challenges that will come along with that and how you can overcome them. And again, what are you going to be doing? What are your learners going to be doing? And then what we're not doing in place of this. Because if you're going into a sprint mode, this is your focus. Now, I know that's difficult because, again, you're going to be pulled by all your different development work that will be going on at this time. But that is why we have asked, and we've told head teachers and we've told deputies that they all know that you're here. They have sent you as a representative. So you've been given that opportunity to really focus in on that. And if you need us to help support with that, we're more than keen to support with that as well, because that is your focus for this time. Stop. Okay, so the next part is the doing phase. So you're going into your sprint, you're implementing this, you're working on it. And again, what we're looking at here is knowing better from your research. So you've done the research, you've got this information, and then you're linking it to the practice. You're doing better in your practice as a result. So you intentionally practice this chosen strategy or technique that you're going to implement. Okay, you're carving out time. You're saying, for the 3 periods that I've got that first year for 2 weeks, that is what I'm doing. I'm not doing anything else. I'm working on this. Okay. Again, you're making adjustments as you go along. So as this is going along, you're tweaking, you're rethinking, you're adapting your approaches because you go, do you know what? I use Jigsaw, doesn't work. I'm going to try something else. Okay. You're adapting as you go along. And the last part here is think about the progress that you're making as this go along. Ask yourself, reflect on it. You're also engaging in an inquiry as you go along with this, and think, well, what's going well, what's not? How can I adapt as a result? And then finally, put some evidence that supports the journey that you're going on. It could be observations, it could be work samples, it could be videos, photographs, etc. Think about what evidence that you can bring out that shows the impact that this sprint has had. And that will then help us with the next part, which is our the other way. It's the reflection stage, it's the review stage. And this is so fundamental to it, because you're not just going away in isolation, working on it, and then never thinking about it again. It's the opportunity to really reflect on what you've done, what went well, what didn't go so well, what do you need to adapt or change, and then what's your next sprint that you're going to focus on. It's always thinking about forward because it's about improvement. It's always trying to move forward. And also the opportunity to learn from each other. The opportunity to sit down and go, this is the class I had, this is the sprint I did, this is what worked well, this is not what worked so well. And the opportunity to engage in collaborative discussion to try and think, how do we improve that going forward? And we'll spend a bit of time this afternoon explaining how we want you to format that. But I will not go into too much detail about that just now, because I think it's important that you get an opportunity to plan it first. But we'll talk about the sharing of learning event that we're going to be planning. Okay. Okay, so what I want you, if possible, we could do go till 12. Is in front of you, we're going to have a go at the 4 C's.